It was a gray, rainy morning when the courthouse filled with people, their coats dripping and their expressions tense. Most weren't even directly involved in the case. But word had spread around town that something about this hearing was different. A little girl was at the center of it, and though no one could say exactly what she might reveal, there was a quiet feeling that today could change everything. 3-year-old Lily sat on the front bench, barely able to keep her legs from swinging. She held onto a soft, worn-out stuffed bunny named Mr. Buttons with one hand and clung to her grandmother's fingers with the other. Her grandmother, June, had raised 3 children and now found herself raising a grandchild too young to understand the turmoil surrounding her. Lily's big brown eyes scanned the courtroom slowly, unsure of what any of it meant. She didn't cry or whimper. She didn't fidget or ask questions. She just watched, quietly. Her face was blank, but not empty. It was the kind of silence that made adults nervous, not the silence of shyness, but the kind that made you wonder what was going on behind those wide, thoughtful eyes. Lily's parents were not sitting together. Her father sat rigid in a gray suit on one side of the room, glancing around impatiently. Her mother sat on the other side, wringing her hands, her eyes red from too many sleepless nights. The court case had started as a custody dispute, but something had shifted. A vague and unsettling incident had taken it into more serious territory. No one had witnessed what happened. No one except Lily. But Lily hadn't spoken about that day. Not once. Every time someone tried to ask, she went quiet. Therapists had tried. Child psychologists had tried, but Lily had buried whatever she saw deep inside her. The bailiff called the court to order. Judge Melanie Knox, known for her sharp mind and gentle handling of child cases, entered the room. She gave Lily a brief glance and a small, reassuring smile. Then the proceedings began. At that moment, the side door opened quietly. Officer Karen entered, followed by a large, steady-footed German shepherd named Max. He was a trained police dog, used in both criminal investigations and as an emotional support animal for children and victims. His presence was an unusual had begun allowing service dogs to help ease stress in tense hearings. But Lily's reaction was anything but ordinary. The moment Max stepped into the room, Lily froze. Her eyes widened, and she sat upright, as if something inside her had been triggered. She let go of her grandmother's hand and dropped Mr. Buttons onto the bench. Everyone else was focused on opening remarks. But June noticed immediately. She leaned down and whispered, "Lily, are you okay?" But the child didn't answer. Lily slid off the bench and took one quiet step after another toward Max. Her movements were slow, almost dreamlike. Officer Karen noticed her and hesitated. She'd worked with children before, but none had ever approached Max like this. The entire room gradually noticed the little girl moving forward. Even the judge paused mid-sentence, following the small figure with her eyes. Lily stopped, just in front of Max. The dog stood perfectly still. He didn't move, didn't bark, didn't sniff. He just looked at her with the calm gaze of a creature that sensed something important was happening. And then, slowly, Lily reached out and touched his head. A collective breath seemed to be held across the room. She knelt and wrapped her arms around the dog's neck, pressing her cheek gently into his fur. Officer Karen was ready to pull Max back if needed, but Max didn't flinch. He lowered his head slightly, almost protectively. Then Lily whispered something. It was too soft for most to hear, but Karen, who was kneeling beside the dog, caught the faintest sound. 2 syllables, a breath, not a sentence. But it wasn't random. It was deliberate. Lily stayed there a few more seconds, then slowly stood, walked back to her bench, picked up Mr. Buttons, and sat beside her grandmother again. No one moved. Even the court reporters had stopped typing. Judge Knox looked over her glasses. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Something about that moment was impossible to explain, but it was clear to everyone that the silence Lily had carried for so long was starting to break. The courtroom was never meant to be a place for children. Its walls echoed with the weight of grown-up words, custody, evidence, objection. But that day, when a 3-year-old girl hugged a police dog in the middle of a hearing, the walls themselves seemed to lean in and listen. After Lily returned to her seat, silence lingered like a mist. Judge Knox gave a quick glance to the bailiff, who nodded and stepped outside. The judge tapped her gavel once, softly. "Let's pause for a short recess," she said. 10 minutes. Attorneys stood, murmurs filled the air, and Lily's parents both turned their eyes toward her, unsure of what they had just witnessed. But Lily wasn't paying attention to them. Her focus remained on Max, who had now sat down near Officer Karen, still calm and patient, as if waiting for further instruction. June leaned close to Lily. "Sweetheart, what did you say to the dog?" Lily blinked. "I told him he was brave." June smiled faintly, but her heart ached. That wasn't just a child playing with words. Something had stirred in Lily. Something real. Outside in the hallway, Officer Karen knelt beside Max and gently patted his head. "You're something else, aren't you?" she whispered. She didn't know what had just happened either, but she knew enough to trust a dog's instinct, and Max had understood that little girl in a way No adult had managed to. Inside the judge's chambers, 2 attorneys and a court-appointed child psychologists were already in conversation with Judge Knox. She spoke, said the psychologist, a woman named Dr. Elena Rhodes. We've been working with her for weeks, and she hasn't said a word about that day. Not to me, not to her grandmother. But the presence of that dog triggered something. The judge nodded thoughtfully. And you believe it was connected to the incident? I do, Dr. Rhodes replied. Children don't process trauma the way adults do. Sometimes their minds lock things away until they feel safe. And sometimes it's not a person that unlocks it, it's a smell, a sound, or, in this case, a dog. Back in the courtroom, Lily fidgeted with Mr. Button's floppy ears. She didn't seem scared. In fact, she looked calmer than she had in weeks. June noticed the change immediately. Her granddaughter, who had refused to sleep without a light on, who hadn't smiled in days, was sitting peacefully next to a dog she had never met until that morning. Max let out a low sigh as he lay on the floor, his head resting between his paws. Lily turned and looked at him again. She stood up. June tried to stop her, but Lily gently shook her head. I want to go to him. June hesitated, then gave a small nod. Okay, but stay close. Lily walked slowly back to Max. This time, the entire room didn't freeze. They just watched. Softer now, as if afraid to disturb a fragile moment. Lily sat cross-legged beside the dog and stroked his fur gently. After a moment, she looked up at Officer Karen. His eyes are the same, Lily said. Karen looked confused. The same as who? Sweetheart. Lily pointed toward the courtroom doors. The man who was mean. Karen's breath caught in her throat. You mean, someone with eyes like Max? Lily nodded. They looked kind, but they were not. Karen didn't know what to say. She simply knelt down beside her and asked gently, can you tell me what happened? Lily leaned in close to Max and whispered something again. Karen strained to hear, but the words were too soft. Lily then laid her head on the dog's back. Karen didn't press her further. She didn't need to. The girl had started to open up, not under pressure, not with fear, but with something pure and honest. Trust. Minutes later, the judge returned, and the courtroom resumed. But the atmosphere had changed. Everyone had seen how Lily responded. To Max, everyone had seen how still she became, how her silence wasn't just silence. It was memory waiting to bloom. What they didn't yet know was that the few words Lily had shared were already sending quiet ripples through the case. Officer Karen had written them down, and Dr. Rhodes would soon recommend further child-sensitive interviews. The judge agreed. As the hearing wrapped for the day, Max walked beside Lily on her way out. She didn't hold her grandmother's hand this time. She walked proudly, holding Max's leash like it was a lifeline. And just before they exited the courtroom, Lily turned around and looked at the judge. He didn't fall, she said softly. He was pushed. The room froze. No one breathed. Then, Lily walked out, as calm as a whisper, while behind her, a courtroom full of grown-ups sat in absolute silence, wondering what else this child still remembered. The courtroom was no longer just a room with polished floors and tired legal faces. After Lily's quiet declaration, he didn't fall. He was pushed. It had become something else. A place of stillness, of weight, of reawakened questions that no one thought would be answered. Judge Knox sat frozen for a moment, her pen hovering above her notepad. She exchanged a look with the court clerk, who nodded slowly, confirming what she too had heard. The gavel remained untouched. No order needed to be called. No one spoke. Everyone was simply waiting to understand what had just happened. Outside, the courtroom, in a small hallway filled with cool air and the faint smell of polished wood. Lily sat on a bench beside Max. Her hand rested gently on the dog's thick fur. He didn't move, only blinked slowly, occasionally glancing at her as if to say, I'm still here. Officer Karen stood nearby, not speaking, just observing. June sat across from her granddaughter, unsure if she should ask questions or simply let the silence speak for itself. Dr. Rhodes soon arrived, her bag slung over one shoulder, her expression kind but alert. She crouched down to Lily's level and smiled. Hi Lily, I'm Dr. Elena. We met once, remember? Lily nodded slowly. Dr. Rhodes looked toward Max. It looks like you and Max are really good friends now. He's nice, Lily said softly, petting the dog's ear. He listens. Did you talk to him about what happened? The doctor asked gently. Lily hesitated, then gave a single, quiet nod. Dr. Rhodes didn't push her further. Do you think you'd feel okay talking to me about it sometime? Maybe with Max in the room. Lily looked down. If Max stays, I can. June's eyes filled with tears. It had been nearly 2 months since the day everything changed, when Lily came home crying and didn't say why, when police reports were filled with conflicting statements, and when the little girl who used to sing in the kitchen stopped speaking. Altogether, that night had remained a fog. The father claimed Lily tripped and fell while they were playing. The mother claimed she heard shouting and arrived too late to see anything. A neighbor said they saw Lily crying on the balcony. But no, I saw the exact moment it happened. No one, except Lily. Inside the judge's chambers, the legal team was reviewing whether Lily's words could be used in any capacity. Technically, she was too young to testify under oath. But if her statements led to new evidence or matched old evidence already overlooked, it could change the entire course of the case. Judge Knox rubbed her temples. We're not going to treat this like a breakthrough unless it's handled carefully. The last thing we do is re-traumatize the child. Attorney Benson, representing the state, leaned forward. She didn't say much, but what she did say contradicts the father's account. And that's enough for a forensic re-examination, said Dr. Rhodes, who had joined them moments earlier. There's a bruise on the child's shoulder, documented 2 days after the event. It was dismissed as a fall injury. But if she was pushed, the angle might tell a different story. By that evening, a new motion had been filed to reopen the investigation. The court approved a secondary forensic analysis, and Dr. Rhodes was granted temporary permission to conduct child-sensitive interviews with Max present at all times. Over the next few days, Lily visited the courthouse 3 times. Each time, she was accompanied by Max, who sat quietly beside her as she slowly began to unravel more of what she had seen. She described a loud voice, a broken toy, a fast movement, a balcony door that slammed shut. He got mad, she said during one session, her hand on Max's paw. He pushed the toy, then pushed Mommy. But Mommy didn't fall. He did. Those few words sparked something critical. No one had known that Lily's father had fallen to he'd never mentioned it in his statement. And yet, Lily remembered that clearly. Investigators reviewed hospital records and found an unreported wrist sprain on the father's medical chart that had been dismissed as unrelated. Now it didn't seem so simple. What began as a soft whisper beside a dog was quickly becoming the thread that pulled the whole story into focus. Lily, who hadn't spoken in weeks, was not only beginning to talk, she was beginning to heal. And, all because of a quiet connection with a dog who didn't ask her to explain anything. Max had given her something no adult could, the space to feel safe enough to remember. The days that followed were unlike anything the court had expected. Each time, Lily entered the child-safe interview room, she was calmer, more willing to speak. But only with Max beside her. Dr. Rhodes prepared the space carefully. Soft lighting, colorful wall drawings, no pressure. The room had a small table with crayons and paper, a few stuffed animals, and Max lying comfortably near the rug. He was more than a companion, he had become Lily's anchor. On her 3rd visit, Lily reached for a blue crayon and started to draw. It was a simple picture: a balcony, a stuffed toy, and 3 figures, a small one with pigtails, a tall one with angry eyes, and a third, falling through a scribbled rail. Dr. Rhodes studied the drawing without reacting too strongly. That's a very nice picture. Lily, can you tell me who's in it? Lily pointed. That's me, that's Daddy, and that's the toy. Did something happen to the toy? Lily nodded. He broke it. And what happened next? She paused and gently patted Max's head. He yelled. Mommy told him to stop. He said it wasn't his fault. Then he pushed. Dr. Rhodes leaned in. Who did he push? Lily looked at the drawing again. Her tiny finger moved from the tall figure to the toy. Then finally, to the railing. Me. Those 2 letters changed everything. Dr. Rhodes didn't show alarm. She simply asked, and did someone catch you? Lily shook her head. I grabbed the rail. Mommy pulled me back. And what happened to Daddy? Lily whispered. He fell too. He hit the plant. Then he said, don't say anything. Dr. Rhodes's heart sank. The details were vivid. The drawing matched the layout of the apartment from police photos. The balcony, the planter, even the railings, chipped corner. Lily remembered it all. That evening, the psychologist reported her findings directly to Judge Knox and the legal teams. What had once been dismissed as a tragic accident now had clear signs of aggression, threats, and cover-up. This drawing matches the crime scene photos, Dr. Rhodes explained. Lily's memory, despite her age, is remarkably accurate. And she remembered more each time with Max present. Judge Knox, who had kept a firm but fair approach throughout, leaned back in her chair, so the child didn't fall by accident. No, Your Honor, said Dr. Rhodes. She was pushed. Her mother intervened and saved her. But what's more troubling is that afterward, the father threatened the child into silence. Attorney Benson nodded gravely. That explains the delay in her speech, the nightmares, the refusal to talk, and it explains the broken toy we found in the dumpster. Another investigator added, we thought it was unrelated. The judge closed her file, reopened the case fully, request protection for the mother and child, and arranged for an in-home safety check immediately. Meanwhile, Lily returned home with June. It was late, and the sky outside their apartment window had turned orange with the setting sun. Lily sat on the carpet with Max curled beside her. June brought over a cup of warm milk and sat quietly nearby. We're very brave today, June said gently. Lily nodded but didn't say much. She simply leaned into Max's fur. Do you remember what Daddy said after? Lily asked suddenly. June tilted her head. After what, honey? After I almost fell. He said if I told, I'd go away forever. Like the dog he gave away, June's eyes widened. The dog. It was something she had almost forgotten. Months ago, Lily's family had owned a brown shepherd, named Bruno. Lily adored him. Then one day, Bruno was just gone. Her father claimed he ran away. But Lily cried for days and never believed it. Max looked so much like Bruno, the same eyes, the same gentle face. And now it made sense when Lily first saw Max in court. It wasn't just a connection, it was a memory. A bridge. Bruno had been taken away. Her voice had been taken away. But somehow, this dog a stranger gave both back. That night, Lily slept for the first time in weeks without waking up crying. Max lay beside her bed on a soft blanket the court had sent as a thank you. And as she drifted to sleep, one tiny arm draped over his neck, June whispered to herself, maybe justice won't come loudly, but it's coming. By the end of the week, Lily's case had shifted from quiet concern to urgent priority. Investigators were now reviewing every overlooked detail, every dismissed bruise, and every neglected piece of testimony. At the heart of it all was a 3-year girl who still barely spoke, and yet had revealed more than anyone expected. The most pivotal moment came during what was supposed to be a short, final evaluation. Dr. Rhodes had arranged a meeting inside the courthouse therapy room to allow Lily one more safe space to speak, this time with a forensic child specialist present to observe. Max, of course, was there too, lying beside Lily like a shadow of calm and comfort. Lily entered the room carrying Mr. Buttons, her bunny now patched with stitches and carefully washed. She wore a sky-blue dress, her hair pulled into 2 soft braids. She looked stronger, not louder, not overly cheerful, but steadier. Like the fear that once filled her had started to fade. Dr. Rhodes smiled as Lily entered. Hi Lily, we're just going to talk a little. You don't have to do anything scary. Lily looked up. Is Max staying? Always, said Officer Karen, who had begun to feel as protective of Lily as any family member would. Lily sat beside Max and began quietly coloring. For a few minutes, nothing was said. The specialist observed silently. Knowing these moments had to happen naturally, Dr. Rhodes eventually placed a small toy house on the table and gently asked, can you show me where everyone was the day it happened? Lily glanced at the house. She reached for 3 small figurines and began placing them around the structure. One by the balcony, one in the kitchen, one standing near a small bed. Then she paused. Dr. Rhodes leaned in. What happened first? Lily's hands moved the father figure to the toy bed. He broke my bunny. He said it was dumb. Then what? Mommy said stop. He yelled. Lily's voice was soft but steady. Now, he threw the toy. Then she pushed the child figurine toward the edge of the balcony. Say anything to you? Dr. Rhodes asked. Lily didn't answer at first. She picked up Max's paw and held it gently. Then, without looking up, she whispered 2 words. He lied. Dr. Rhodes blinked. What did he lie about? Lily finally looked up, her voice a little louder. He said I would be taken away. That if I told, I wouldn't see Grandma or Mommy again. Officer Karen's eyes filled with tears. She looked down and quietly scribbled a note. Dr. Rhodes remained calm. But you told anyway. Lily nodded. Because Max said, I'm brave. It wasn't what most would call a confession. But to those in the room, it was a breakthrough. Lily had not only remembered what happened, she understood it now. She understood the fear she'd been carrying wasn't hers to hold. And more importantly, she was learning that telling the truth wasn't something to be punished for. Later that afternoon, a summary of the interview was presented to Judge Knox. It contained transcripts, drawings, and analysis from the forensic specialist. The conclusion was clear. The child's account, though fragmented, consistently pointed to intentional harm and manipulation by her father. By then, Lily's father had hired a new lawyer, claiming the child's memories were planted and unreliable, but the mounting physical evidence's own wrist injury, the broken toy found outside, and the threatening language that matched earlier reports from the mother made the claim weak at best. The judge reviewed everything in silence. Her face, unreadable. When she finally looked up, she spoke quietly but firmly. I believe the child. With that, a court order was signed, removing unsupervised visitation rights from Lily's father and opening the door for formal charges. Outside the courthouse, June stood holding Lily in her arms. Reporters had gathered, but they kept their distance. No questions were shouted, just quiet respect for the little girl who had done something incredibly difficult, and had done it with the help of a 4-legged friend, who never left her side. Lily looked up at Max, who stood patiently beside her. Can Max come home? She asked. June smiled, brushing Lily's hair from her face. I think we'll find a way. Inside the courthouse, justice had finally started to move, and it all began with 2 simple words whispered into the fur of a patient dog. When Lily whispered he lied, it wasn't just a moment between a child and her dog, it was a spark that set everything in motion. And now, that spark had become a flame lighting up long-forgotten corners of a complicated case. The court reopened its investigation. New subpoenas were issued, and previous witness statements were re-examined under the lens of Lily's testimony. One of the most important developments came from someone unexpected, a neighbor who had stayed quiet out of fear. Mrs. Eaton lived 2 floors below Lily's family. She was a retired schoolteacher with a quiet life and a keen memory. After reading a news headline about the brave little girl who spoke through a police dog, she contacted the courthouse herself. In a private interview, Mrs. Eaton told investigators she remembered hearing a loud crash and screaming the night of the incident. She had stepped out onto her balcony and saw Lily's mother clutching the child tightly near the railing, while the father stood frozen, staring down into the courtyard where a potted plant lay shattered. I didn't want to get involved, Mrs. Eaton admitted, but I remember thinking something wasn't right. He didn't run to them. He didn't ask if they were okay. He just kept saying, "You better not say anything." This matched what Lily had described in her own words. It was no longer just the word of a child, it was supported by an adult eyewitness who had nothing to gain. Back in court, the atmosphere had shifted. Lily no longer needed to be present for every hearing, but her impact was felt in every detail. Her story had humanized the case in a way no document or photograph could. It reminded everyone in that courtroom that justice wasn't just about arguments and evidence, it was about courage, even when it came in the smallest voice. Judge Knox held a special hearing to review the new evidence and the testimonies from Dr. Rhodes and Mrs. Eaton. Max was in attendance too, sitting quietly near Officer Karen in the gallery. Though he wasn't needed as a therapy dog that day, the judge allowed him to be present out of respect. The courtroom was packed. Attorneys, clerks, and even court reporters seemed more alert than usual. This case was no longer just about custody or family tension. It was about whether a man had tried to silence the only witness to his actions, and whether he would finally be held accountable. The prosecutor presented the timeline of events clearly: the broken toy, the conflicting stories, the child's silent trauma, and now, the matching statements from the psychologist and the neighbor. When it came time for the defense to speak, Lily's father sat stiffly, his hands clenched together. His lawyer argued that memories from a 3-year-old couldn't be trusted, that imagination and influence could have shaped her story, but the judge was unmoved. Children don't need to remember everything perfectly to be believed, Judge Knox said firmly. What matters is that the core of her story has been consistent, detailed, and now supported by multiple sources including physical evidence. She looked down at the father. You had every opportunity to explain what happened that day, but instead, you changed your story, dismissed your daughter's voice, and hoped no one would listen. Well, we did. With a final decision, the judge granted full custody to Lily's mother and grandmother. All contact between Lily and her father was suspended indefinitely, pending the outcome of a criminal investigation for endangerment and obstruction. As the gavel came down, there was no cheering or applause, just a heavy silence of justice settling. Outside, June waited with Lily, who was watching birds flutter across the sky. Max sat by her side, alert and calm. A young court employee stepped out and handed June the final papers. It's done, she said. She's safe now. Lily looked up. Are we going home? Yes, sweetheart, June said with a soft smile. We're going home. And Max is coming with us. Officer Karen had made special arrangements. Max would be reassigned not to another case, but to Lily's home, where he'd continue as her emotional support companion. The department had approved the request unanimously. As they walked toward the car, Lily skipped a little for the first time in months. Max trotted beside her, his leash loose in June's hand. In the background, the courthouse doors closed behind them. But something much more important had just opened. A future. Life at home had changed. The walls that once echoed with tension now felt softer, safer. Laughter was still rare, but it had begun to return in little moments, like when Lily giggled at Max, chasing his tail in the hallway, or when she tried to teach him how to shake hands with Mr. Buttons, her forever favorite stuffed bunny. For the first time in months, June could breathe without holding it. The apartment had been rearranged. The old balcony door now had a child-proof lock, and flower pots lined the edge with bright yellow marigolds handpicked by Lily on a trip to the local nursery. She called them sunfaces. June didn't correct her. Lily now slept through most nights. Max always stayed beside her bed, his head often resting gently against her mattress. Some mornings, June would find the little girl curled up against his side, using his thick fur as a pillow, Mr. Buttons tucked under one arm. Therapy sessions continued once a week, but they no longer felt clinical. Dr. Rhodes visited their home now instead of the office, turning the sessions into gentle conversations on the living room rug, while Lily colored and Max listened. Do you ever think about the balcony? Dr. Rhodes asked one afternoon, careful with her tone. Lily didn't stop coloring. Sometimes, she said, but I don't have to be scared. Max is here. Dr. Rhodes nodded, jotting down a note. And how about the man from before? Lily paused. I don't like thinking about him, but Mommy said telling the truth makes me strong. Mommy's right. Lily smiled faintly. Then she leaned forward and whispered something into Max's ear. He tilted his head, tail wagging gently. What did you say to him? Dr. Rhodes asked curiously. Lily shrugged. Just told him he's my hero. Across the room, June wiped a quiet tear. Not everything was perfect. Of course, Lily still flinched at loud voices. She didn't like thunder or slamming doors, and she often asked if Max would ever go away, like Bruno did. No, sweetheart, June always answered. Max is staying as long as you need him. One afternoon, Lily's mother came to visit. It had taken time-long talks with counselors, court-approved, supervision, and a gradual rebuilding of trust. She had been through her own trauma, but she was trying. And Lily's face lit up the moment she saw her. The visit was quiet at first. They sat together in the small garden outside the apartment, where butterflies danced between marigolds and bees hummed near the bushes. Lily reached out and touched her mother's hand. You didn't leave me. No, baby, her mother said softly. I never wanted to. I remember when you grabbed me, Lily said. That night, I almost fell. Her mother's hand trembled slightly. I did everything I could to keep you safe. I'm so sorry I didn't get away from him sooner. You did, Lily said firmly. You got me out. Max wandered over and nuzzled against Lily's leg. She leaned down and wrapped her arms around his neck. He helped to Lily, added Dot. Her mother reached out and scratched behind Max's ears. Thank you, Max, she whispered. Later that evening, June received a call from the precinct. Officer Karen had pushed for Max's full transfer of ownership. With some help from a local animal rights group and a wave of public support, the request had gone through. Max was officially Lily's. June sat down beside Lily, who was playing with blocks on the living room floor. Sweetheart, she said gently, I have some news. Max is ours now, forever. Lily blinked. Like forever, forever. June smiled. Yes, you won't have to say goodbye. The little girl's face lit up like the sun she'd drawn so many times. She ran to Max and hugged him tightly. Did you hear that? You're staying. Forever, forever, Max responded with a low happy bark, his tail thumping against the floor. The story of the courtroom dog and the little girl had started to spread beyond their town. People wrote letters, sent drawings, and donated to support child therapy programs that used animals in healing. But Lily didn't care about the news or attention. She only cared that her home was finally her own again, that she had her mommy, her grandma, Mr. Buttons and Max, and maybe most important of all, she had her voice. The sun had just started to rise when Lily opened her eyes. A soft, golden light filtered through the window, casting long shadows across the floor. Max was already awake, his head resting on the edge of her bed, his eyes steady and warm. Good morning, Lily whispered, stretching her small arms. She reached out and gently touched his ear. You stayed? He thumped his tail in reply. It had been months since the day in court, the day she whispered those first brave words that changed everything. And though much had happened since then, Lily didn't carry the weight of it the way she once did. She carried strength now. Strength built on truth, love, and the soft, constant presence of her dog. That morning was a special one. June had promised something exciting, though she hadn't said what. Lily had dressed herself in her favorite yellow dress, the one with tiny flowers stitched along the collar, and tied her own shoes with a little help. Mr. Buttons, as always, was tucked beneath her arm. When they arrived at the town library, Lily's eyes widened. Balloons floated near the entrance. A small stage had been set up near the fountain, with folding chairs lined neatly in rows. A crowd had already begun to gather, neighbors, teachers, a few reporters, and even some courthouse staff who had followed Lily's story from the very beginning. Officer Karen stood by the stage, dressed in her formal uniform, a proud smile on her face. Max, fitted with a brand new vest that read Hero Companion Ridered, walked proudly beside her. Why are there so many people? Lily asked, her eyes darting nervously. June bent down and smoothed Lily's hair. Because they want to say thank you, to you, and to Max. Lily looked uncertain. But I'm just little. Yes, June said gently, and you were still brave. That's why this matters. When Lily and Max walked onto the stage, the crowd fell silent. Officer Karen stepped to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, she began. Today we honor courage, not just the kind that comes from strength or size, but the kind that rises from honesty, even when it's hard. Lily showed us what it means to speak the truth, even after being scared into silence. And Max, well, Max did what dogs do best. He stood by her side when words weren't enough. The crowd applauded, but Lily just looked at Max and gave his paw a little squeeze. Then Judge Knox took the stage, her black robe flowing gently in the breeze. I've seen many cases in my courtroom, she said, but I will never forget the day a little girl walked across the floor, hugged a dog, and whispered something that changed everything. That moment reminded all of us that the justice system isn't just about laws and procedures. It's about people. It's about listening. She turned to Lily with a smile. And you taught us to listen better. With that, the judge presented Lily with a framed certificate that read, in recognition of extraordinary bravery, kindness, and the courage to speak the truth. But the real surprise came next. Officer Karen knelt beside Max and unclipped his service badge from his collar. This belonged to Max when he was an officer, she said. Now, he's yours. She handed the badge to Lily. You keep it, okay? To remember everything you two did together. Lily's hands shook slightly as she took the shiny silver tag. She looked up at Karen and whispered, "Thank you for letting him stay." Karen smiled. He chose you. That night, after all the photos were taken, after the balloons drifted and the crowd went home, Lily lay in bed beside Max. The badge now hung on her wall beside a crayon drawing of the two of them flying through the sky, Max wearing a cape and Lily holding a star. Do you think we'll always remember this? She asked quietly. Max, as always, said nothing. But he nudged closer and rested his head across her lap. Lily looked down at him. Even if I forget sometimes, you won't, right? His tail wagged softly. June watched from the doorway, tears in her eyes and a full heart in her chest. The road had been long, painful, unfair. But in the end, her granddaughter had found her way forward, not through anger, not through revenge, but through truth, love, and one loyal dog. Lily closed her eyes, her hand resting on Max's back. Forever, Max, she whispered, and for the first time in a long time, forever didn't feel so far away.